Good afternoon. Everybody hears.
Afternoon.
I think
Guys,
Ryan.
hold on one sec, guys. This is Ryan. Kelly, if you're on, there's still some people who aren't able to record. Can we just make sure that that's handled before we get started officially? Guys, just give us a sec. She's going to go through and enable everybody's record function. Okay, before we get started, anybody else having issues with the record? Kelly, can we check Autumn Rose, please? Also, Adam Murphy says he can't record. All right, Chris, Justin, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm attorney L. Chris Stewart with my law partner, Justin Miller, and our law partner, Madeline Simmons of Stewart Miller Simmons. We represent the family of Rayshard Brooks. We're briefly here to address the reinstatement of Officer Rolfe to the force. And it is disappointing to the family, but what is more important is the questions that we have now. We all heard the mayor and the former chief of police come before the world and announce they were firing the officers and justice will come and things of that nature. But we find it mind-boggling that our elected officials and the former chief weren't aware of the proper procedure to fire an officer. So now it is questions of, was that done to temporarily pacify the protesters and the people around the world that were upset? And we find it unbelievable that they didn't know about this process. African Americans in this country, when it comes to civil rights, don't want temporary pacification. They want justice, not temporary actions of sympathy. The mayor and the city attorney came to the funeral of Rayshard Brooks and hugged the family and spoke about justice. But we don't want tokens of that. We want actual justice. When it comes to even trying to resolve civil lawsuits with the city of Atlanta, it's impossible. Though on TV, it may seem that the city cares, you can talk to any major civil rights attorney in Georgia, and we all came to the state capitol and we complained to all of you that the city of Atlanta does not take civil rights seriously anymore. And we went unheard. And now you see another example where we're forced to drag these cases out in court for years, where there's no justice to the family. And it continues. The city of Atlanta cannot be the alleged blueprint for civil rights for other cities and not actually fulfill that promise. Every other city across this country, we have positively worked with them when it comes to a civil rights case and resolves cases, gotten it done, made reforms with policing, but it's not happening in the alleged city of justice for civil rights. So that's been disappointing. And right now, Officer Rolfe has received more justice than the family of Rayshard Brooks.
This is the city of Atlanta is the city of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. So for us to be going through this in this city with these families is much tougher than going through it in Minnesota with the people up there. And they have shown that they are open to giving justice to people when they deserve it. And in this case, the family of Rayshard Brooks definitely does. I'd ask everybody to think about if this was your father or your brother or your son, right? No matter what happened in the incident, he has a family, and the family's being drugged through the ringer right now with all the actions of the city and the police department. You think about it from the very beginning. There's been no compensation for the family. The officer is now back on the force. The officer has not been convicted of any crime. And so you have a person who is going to stand trial for murder, who is now back on the force and able to do the same things he was doing before that caused him to get off the force in the first place. It's ridiculous. So we are just here to say on behalf of the family, look at these things. Think about if it was your family, and how would you feel if no prosecution was going forward and you had no justice, whether it be for the family and the kids monetarily, or whether it be criminal justice with the officer getting fired or going to jail. None of the above has happened. So we'd like to see something happen in one of those fronts, just on one in the near future, because this is ridiculous and it has to end.
Yeah, and what we want the world to understand is he was reinstated, not whether the shooting was justified. We agree with his lawyer who said this was really procedural. And the procedures clearly, from what the board said, were not followed. And this is not whether the shooting was justified or not. Let's make that very, very clear. But you have to understand, in these civil rights cases, we have to stop focusing so much on the officer. And now this is a great example of the system that is causing it. He got his job back quickly. We can't even get his former files from a prior shooting to figure out what happened in that incident, because the city is fighting us on releasing those records. And to fight us even trying to achieve justice, but yet take actions that will be overturned later is highly disappointing. So it is greater than just the officer. It's the entire way that civil rights is being handled in the city of Atlanta, which is not in step with what John Lewis, Martin Luther King, and all of our civil rights leaders stood for. We'll briefly take very few questions.
Who has the most power at this point to change what happened, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, so right now there are a lot of different fronts, like we said. So the police department has the power to change who they have on the force. The mayor and the city's attorneys have the power to handle something with the family and to give them some modicum of justice, on that side. And then, the court system, which would be the DA's office, who is pushing and who would have to prosecute the case against the officer, has the power to make that happen. So there are 3 or 4 different fronts, and none of them are moving on behalf of the family.
The family's reaction once they heard that Mr. Rolfe was reinstated?
Disappointment. Disappointment and confusion. We explained that this was a procedural situation. And that's why I started with, the same question that we have. We don't understand how that could happen, but it appears maybe that was done just to pacify all of the people that were upset. But temporary justice is not real justice.
Any other questions?
This is Rikki again. From what you all understand, will he be on administrative leave, or will he be actively out as an officer on the streets?
We believe he'll be on administrative leave, but we're not sure. We clearly never know what's going to happen. But we were informed he would be on administrative leave, but we're not sure. That has not been clearly defined.
As you can see, things change very, very rapidly.
Have y'all been updated on what's going on in the courts with the recusals and what's the latest you've heard?
We're not sure what's going on that front either. I believe that they're waiting on a judge to make a ruling on whether the DA Willis will have to take the case or whether it will go to the Attorney General. But it's the same feeling of limbo and being ignored that we have in the criminal case, with the civil case, where we've tried to talk to the city and it just has not been taken seriously. it is a pattern of being ignored.
What message does this decision send to Black people?
Just generally,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily a general message to Black people, more so a message to this family and a message to the citizens of the Atlanta area, the people who live in the city. It is a message that the city and the police department and the DA's office are not really serious about civil rights. And that's what we'd like them to understand, that these are real families. And as these things happen, this is like ripping a Band-Aid off a wound for these families every single time. So we think it's a more specific thing and not just a general thing against Black people.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand this also just happened in the Tanaya Pilgrim and Messiah Young case. Some of the officers were reinstated in that situation because the technical work wasn't done by the city on terminating them. And so this happened before. And in that situation, the mayor and the city also talked to the kids, apologized and consoled them. But yet, when we tried to talk to them about the civil case, it's not taken seriously whatsoever and basically ignored. And same thing with the criminal side. DA Willis will also have that case. So when all of those lawyers came to the city hall to talk to the world about how Atlanta is treating civil rights cases, we were serious. And this is just an example.
In terms of, we all saw what happened on video, and now this officer could potentially be back on the streets. And who knows, we saw what happened. And from what I'm seeing on social media, Black men are scared. They're like, this is outrage to know that he did this and now he's able to get back on the streets.
Well, for a Black man in America, this is par for the course. It's not like one extra officer on the street is going to make you more scared than you already were. We already have those issues when we're pulled over by the police. We've been dealing with this our entire life. So this one additional officer is not going to, tilt the make it so that it's so much against Black men that we can't go outside, right? But it is sad for the family because they know that the person who killed their loved one is out on the street. There's been no adjudication of his guilt, and he's there working still. I think he's going to receive back pay, and their loved one's still gone, and they have no resolution.
Just to be clear, just a question. With what we're seeing, and if you guys could button this for me, there's no court moving forward. He gets his job back, basically. If you're watching this for the first time in months, what message do you think is being sent to the public?
Well, the message is being sent right now is that it appears that Rayshard Brooks' life didn't really matter and that the world has moved on. But clearly that's not the case. All people want is for this officer to go through the proper court proceedings and have a prosecution see if he's guilty or not. That's going to be up to a jury. That's going to be up to the prosecution. And you have to live with those results. Same thing with the civil case. It shouldn't have to drag on for 4 or 5 years like DeAndre Phillips, which is also being totally ignored by the city, even though the kid was shot in the head. But that's what happens in the city of Atlanta with civil rights cases. And it's just not talked about because Atlanta is supposed to be the Black Mecca. And so people assume that African-Americans are treated properly. And we need people to wake up and realize that Minnesota and Minneapolis, those are good examples of the reform and elected officials actually caring and being proactive in changing things and resolving situations. And it's sad that they're the blueprint and city of Atlanta isn't.
Does this get to the heart of what the DA Willis was saying, is that we rushed to judgment on this and it was used for political reasons, whether they should have just stopped and looked at following those procedures? No, in that situation, the former DA believed he had enough evidence to move forward with the arrest and the prosecutions. That's a call that DAs make all the time. DA Willis believes she has the evidence to move forward with that whole Trump thing. So people make calls all the time about moving forward with prosecutions. This entire thing with the firing is not about the case, whether it's justified or not. It's about the city. That's what we're trying to make clear. This is not about whether he's guilty or not guilty.
this was a procedural error where Officer Rolfe didn't get his rights that apparently the procedures and policies have in place. So that's what we're not commenting about whether it was right or wrong. I mean, they clearly, from what the board said, did not follow the proper procedures for them. And that's just an error that cannot happen.
Now, if the mayor and the police department failed to follow proper protocol as suggested by the review board, what would you say directly to the mayor and other city leaders that failed to do this, resulting in the outcome today?
I would just say, think about the families. For them, for a lot of those elected officials, you know, it's just another day at the office and then they go home. But you have to think about the families and the impact that these kind of decisions have on the families. For a family member, you know, because you rushed and did something, now this person is back on the streets. That hurts, you know. And if you don't have any of these other justice things that are happening, that are moving forward or should be moving forward, really working in your favor, then it's just thing after thing after thing that gets piled up on top of the family. And it seems to the family as if, you know, that no one cares about the life of their loved one.
Yeah,
Will you
guys
guys be asking the mayor or the city to now try to terminate him again and follow proper procedure this time? Is that an option or something you're advocating for?
I mean, our understanding is, of course, they would immediately try and do it the proper way and follow the hearings and follow the guidelines that they're supposed to do. And we would assume that that process has already started for them to do it properly. But like I said, you could never make such an assumption when it comes to civil rights in the city right now. We assumed that we wouldn't be preparing all of these lawsuits and we would have worked something out with the city before. But that is an assumption that we now will no longer make, or any civil rights lawyer will make when dealing with the city.
Hey guys, it's Lauren from TMZ. Quick question, and I hopped in late, but so I don't know if you went over this already. Were you guys and the family notified before this hit media, or was this something they learned of, like as we learned of it?
No, we were notified ahead of time. One more question, and Anjali, I think, did she get to ask?
Oh, when you said you were notified, I was wondering if that was yesterday.
We don't want to go with the exact date, but we were given a heads up that this situation was occurring.
You guys also just say what's next for you all in this case?
Yeah, what's next is for us to still try to communicate with the city if they want to about a resolution of the civil part of this case, but we are going to be filing a lawsuit to make sure that the rights of our clients are, you know, protected. The next thing is talking to the DA and seeing if this prosecution can get started, and, you know, we can maybe see if the family can get some resolution on this end. And then, you know, finding out, like Chris said, whether or not the city is going to terminate him, because that was what should have happened in the first place. They just did it the wrong way.
Yeah. And waiting to see what our elected officials are going to say. Who from city council is going to speak up about civil rights? Is the mayor going to come and talk about civil rights? I really like the new police chief, who is now our full-time, full police chief, and seeing what changes are going to happen and get Atlanta back to being the blueprint for civil rights. All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.